devastating air pollution and severe social divide between residents and refugees, a corrupt, unforgiving, and violent social order. This is the world where our protagonist has to deliver oxygen. Can he beat the odds stacked against him and also help a kid, Sawol, become a delivery knight like him? The scene begins in an office where the employees are working diligently. The broadcaster announces the weather, reporting that a sandstorm was hovering over the entire peninsula. Several accidents and incidents have been reported across the nation, and it was critical to maintain structural safety. A man calls out to Sawol, asking if she has prepared the report he requested. Sawol responds affirmatively, mentioning that she will send it to him immediately. Another woman, Minji, calls out to Sawol, asking if she has any plans for the weekend. Minji and another girl are planning to go shopping, and if Sawol was interested, she was welcome to join them. Just as Sawol hears a notification sound, she excuses herself from the conversation with the lady. Standing outside the gate was a man wearing a respirator that covers his face and carrying a box. The system, designed to open the door, asks for identification. The man replies that he was there to deliver a package. The scanner activates, and the system asks for resident confirmation. He uses the barcode on his wrist to scan, and as the system processes the request, he was instructed to stand by. Once the identification was confirmed, the door opens. He steps inside, and upon seeing a woman, he asked she was Sawol. As Sawol agreed, he showed her the screen, asking her to scan it for confirmation. Once her identification was verified, he handed her the package. After that, he left the office. Sawol opened the box and called out to Sawol, asking if he could give her a hand with it. She glanced toward the door, but received no response. She called for him several times, and when she went to check, she found that Sawol wasn't in his room. Outside the building, as the delivery guy was about to get into his van, a small girl wearing a mask approached and called out to him. He asked what she wanted. The girl inquired that what she needed to do to be like him. He was confused and asked her to explain what she meant. She remained silent, so he bent down to her level and gently asked where she lived, warning her that it wasn't safe to be roaming around alone and advising her to go back home. The girl replied that she wanted to deliver packages too, and asked what she needed to do to become a delivery agent. He asked her why she wanted to be one. Standing up, he told her that the job wasn't like a picnic, and there were no breaks between deliveries. They had to work through all kinds of weather, whether it was rain, snow, or wind. He also mentioned the respirator they were required to wear, constantly putting it on and taking it off, which he found incredibly irritating. Just then, the delivery boy stopped a knife that was thrown toward him. The girl was shocked to see it. A group of armed men wearing respirators approached. Their leader, a chubby man, ordered the delivery boy to leave the truck and get out of there without causing trouble. He revealed that he had already killed 10 delivery agents across 4 districts. Casually, the delivery boy teased, claiming that he was trembling in fear, but he still had all those packages to deliver. He asked if they planned to deliver them for him if he left the truck. The man laughed and said that the packages wouldn't reach their correct addresses if he left. The delivery boy replied that it wouldn't be fine, as he would get in trouble with his boss if the packages were delivered to the wrong addresses. He argued that being in trouble was better than dying. The man stated that he wasn't trying to take innocent lives, and told the delivery boy to leave the truck while he was asking kindly. He reminded the boy to keep in mind that he had already killed 10 delivery agents across 4 districts. The delivery boy sarcastically remarked that the man expected him to believe that he didn't want to kill anyone, looking the way he did. With that, the delivery boy used his leg to send the knife flying into the air, then kicked it toward the group, saying that even a small child wouldn't take them seriously. The girl was surprised and wondered if she was supposed to laugh. The knife struck the man's oxygen tank, causing it to leak. The delivery boy commented that the man was responsible for killing 10 agents in 4 districts, and then challenged them to fight him. The man ordered his group to kill the delivery boy, and they all rushed to attack him at once. The girl hid behind the delivery van and watched as the delivery boy kicked one man, sending him to the ground. Another man attacked with a katana, but the delivery boy blocked the strike with his fist and then used his other fist to punch the man, knocking him down as well. One by one, he defeated them all. Then, their boss appeared, wielding a large hammer. He declared that he would squash the delivery boy like a bug, and launched a powerful attack with the hammer. However, the delivery boy dodged the blow by jumping, and then used his hands to land on the man's shoulders. He asked if the man wiped out 10 delivery agents with that slow hammer. The man demanded to know what the delivery boy was doing, and when he saw the boy pulling the knife out of the oxygen tank, he shouted for him not to. But the delivery boy took it out anyway and kicked the man, sending him crashing into his own men. One of the men stood there, shocked by what he had just witnessed. He saw all of his comrades falling near the truck, where the girl was still hiding. The girl thought to herself that the delivery boy was incredibly strong. Her mind then wandered to her past, remembering her brother, who had once told her he was going to be a delivery agent. She asked herself what that even meant. The two of them had been trapped in a hole with other people at the time. The boy wondered if becoming a delivery agent was the only way to escape that dismal hole in the ground. The girl asked if he would become a delivery agent, so they could get out of there. He replied that his friend had told him that if they became delivery agents, they wouldn't have to worry about oxygen or food, and they wouldn't have to care about what people above the ground thought of them. He said that they could live a comfortable life with their families. His sister then mentioned that she wanted to be a delivery agent too. He replied that she couldn't. When she asked why, he told her it was because she was a girl. His friend had told him earlier that delivery agents had to be strong and fight like beasts. The girl, determined, said she was a good fighter too, and asked if he wanted a piece of her. But then, she remembered a time when they had both been badly injured, blood oozing from their heads. She called out to her brother, begging him to wake up and open his eyes, but he was too far gone to respond. Suddenly, a corpse was thrown over them, adding to the pile of bodies around them. The girl remembered how her brother had promised earlier that he would take care of her by becoming a delivery agent, and that together they would live a comfortable life. People came to collect the bodies to burn them all. The girl became emotional as she remembered everything. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she tried to wipe them away, but a respirator made it difficult. The leader of the bad guys saw her distress, and seizing her shouted for the delivery boy to stop. The girl begged him to let her go, but the man ignored her, threatening the delivery boy that if he moved even an inch, he would kill her. He said he was just going to take his truck and leave quietly, so the boy should stay put. As the delivery boy took a step forward, the man ordered him to stop, warning that if he didn't, the girl would die. The delivery boy replied that he didn't understand why the man thought this would work on him, and wondered why he should care whether the little girl lived or died. The man explained that it was the job of the delivery boy to protect the residents. The delivery boy agreed that protecting the residents was his duty, but he still wasn't backing down. The man then checked the girl's hand and noticed that her resident barcode was missing. The delivery boy rushed forward, saying it was a poor choice of hostage, and punched the man, sending him stumbling back a few steps. The girl was freed. The delivery boy turned to her and explained that being a delivery agent was dangerous. Agents were often targeted by brutal and dangerous people like the man they had just fought. If she still wanted to become a delivery agent, she would need to be as strong as he was. Then the police arrived. The senior officer saluted the delivery boy and praised his efforts, saying they would take care of the rest, and that he could leave now. The bad guys begged, pleading for mercy, saying they wouldn't do it again. They claimed they were bluffing when they said they had killed 10 agents in 4 districts, and that they only said it to scare the delivery boy. They begged for forgiveness, but the senior officer shot one of them in the head, silencing him. He explained that the man had died because he was a refugee. Then, the police killed the rest of them as well. The delivery boy entered his van, pressing the purification button to clean the air, and removed his respirator. The scene shifted to Sawol's room, where she had arranged 3 items in a row on top of a small pile, creating a tower. She said that if the girl stepped outside without permission, she would receive more than 3 bumps on the head. The girl reassured her that nothing had happened. Sawol thanked God for that. The girl smiled and assured Sawol that she was a master at hiding and sneaking around. Sawol sighed, asking why the girl was so curious about what was outside. The girl admitted it was because she was curious. Sawol asked her to promise that she wouldn't sneak out again without permission. The girl replied that she wasn't a baby anymore, then reluctantly promised, mumbling that promises were meant to be broken. Sawol smacked her on the head, adding 4 bumps, and then sternly told her to stop it. She wasn't kidding. Sawol warned her that if anyone found out they were living like this, they'd both be doomed. The girl reluctantly agreed, saying she would stay inside. The night passed uneventfully, and the next morning, the delivery boy met a man named Daegu Shin. He scanned his identification, and once it was approved, Daegu received his package. Daegu mentioned he had a package that needed to be sent out. He handed it to the delivery boy, who asked if Daegu had written down the recipient's name and address. Daegu confirmed that he had. The delivery boy reassured him that the package would be delivered by the next day. As Daegu thanked him, the delivery boy stepped outside with the package in hand. Daegu then turned toward a few people in his room and asked if everything was good. These men had captured his family, and the leader remarked that Daegu had done so well, convincing them that he was an actor. As promised, they released Daegyu's family, but they cautioned him to be careful, as they were about to hear something beautiful. Daegu had set the stage for them, so they were advised to pay close attention. Daegu apologized to his family for what had happened. The man then began counting down from 3 to 1, and the package in the delivery boy's hands exploded, as it contained a bomb. The man laughed as he heard the blast. The scene shifted to a small girl and boy, who were hiding and looking around. The boy remarked that she was there. The girl nodded in agreement. He said he wouldn't be able to come out for a while, to which she replied that she had come to tell him that. He was surprised and asked about her training. She explained that her sister had found out she sneaked out and that she had to return soon, so for now, they would have to train on their own. He wondered about the situation, and then told her he had something to show her. She asked what it was. He said it was a place she would be very interested in, but if she had to go home soon, they could visit it another time. She wondered about the place and suggested they swing by quickly, asking him to agree. He stood up and told her to come with him. He took her to a place where they could begin their journey. He mentioned that they needed to reach District 4, and that they would get there quickly. She replied that if it turns out to be boring, so he will be dead. They entered the canalway, walking together. As they moved, he asked what Sawol planned to do with the girl. The girl asked him to clarify. He responded, saying that Sawol wouldn't even let the girl leave the house and was essentially keeping her a prisoner. He wondered how much longer she intended to maintain that. The girl replied that Sawol wasn't imprisoning her, just being cautious. She explained that if the girl kept her head down for a little while longer, she wouldn't need to hide anymore. The boy then wondered if there was another way for a refugee to earn residency without becoming a delivery agent. The girl told him that Sawol wouldn't share that information, but she was sure Sawol had a plan. The boy suggested she tell Sawol that she was going to become a delivery agent, considering that was why they had been training together. The girl revealed that when she last discussed it with Sawol, she almost got killed. She explained that if the girl got the residency, she wouldn't train or become a delivery agent. The boy wondered aloud if he was on his own. The girl guessed that she could spar with him from time to time. He mentioned that he was very grateful. The scene shifted to a place where a fight between two men was ongoing. After taking a blow, one of the men fell to the ground. There were many spectators watching, some even placing bets on the outcome of the battle. The crowd cheered for both fighters, teasing the injured man for failing to dodge the attack. As the fallen fighter remained unable to stand, the referee declared the result. Kim, accompanied by a few others, was also present, and remarked that it was a total waste. A man approached Kim, commenting that he was here again. Kim nodded in agreement, saying that he was on his way back and that no one had caught his attention that day. The man urged Kim to calm down and suggested that he stick around for the final round. Just then, a bulky man appeared. The small boy and the girl emerged from the canal path, and the boy grabbed her hand, urging her to hurry, saying that it sounded like the fight was still ongoing. She wondered what was going on. The audience was stunned to see the giant man and murmured that he was surely over 9 feet tall, and they had never seen him before. They were confident that anyone who faced him would be knocked out with a single punch, so they placed their bets on him. As everyone was betting on the giant, the man taking the money asked if they were going to place their bets without even knowing who the opponent would be. The crowd confidently replied that it didn't matter who the opponent was. The giant would surely win. The girl and the boy sat on the stairs, watching everything unfold. She realized that they were at an underground fight club. He agreed with her, adding that it wasn't just any ordinary fight club. She asked what he meant by not ordinary. He asked if she knew how delivery agents were chosen. She replied that this was exactly what she had wanted to ask him the other day, and she guessed it was some sort of contest. He said she was half right. Dinny explained that it was common for delivery agents to be out of commission due to injury or death, which created frequent vacancies for the position. However, if contests were held for the position only after it became available, it would take a significant amount of time to promote the contest, gather enough contestants, and, most importantly, not all refugees would even hear about it. Even among the contestants, it would take more time to sift through the nobodies. From the delivery service provider's perspective, the process was a nuisance, since the position needed to be filled quickly. That's why they began using smaller fight clubs nationwide. Casting directors at each of these clubs would pre-select the best fighters in advance. When the position became available, the top-tier fighters would gather for the contest, and the winner would become the delivery agent. She wondered if, in a nutshell, that meant these were the preliminary rounds for the final contest. He agreed, saying that's exactly what they would have to go through. She remarked that it meant all those fighters were their rivals. The giant man shouted loudly, asking that who will be his opponent. The crowd was buzzing with excitement. The giant man declared that he didn't care who stepped up. He would crush them all. With trembling hands, a man wearing a cap raised his hand and said he had been standing there the whole time, and he was the one who would be his opponent. The scene shifts to Sawol's office, where she was on a call. She introduces herself, mentioning that she called a while back and asks if there are any updates on her inquiry. When she hears that the investigation was still ongoing, she acknowledges that she understands it's not easy, but insists that the person should hurry. After requesting more information, she ends the call, feeling a headache coming on. The scene then shifts to the District 5 warehouse, where the delivery supervisor, Dalsu Bey, learns about the explosion that morning. He was informed that the agent survived, but the stolen vehicle was still missing. Dalsu asks the man if they couldn't simply track the vehicle using the location tracker. The man replies that the tracker has been removed. Dalsu pauses and asks if the thieves knew where the tracker was located. The man confirms that they did. Dalsu notes that things are getting messy and wonders when the injured agent will be back to work. The man replies that he doesn't think the injured agent will return. Dalsu was surprised and asks why. The man explains that although the delivery agent survived, his injuries were severe, and more importantly, his right hand was amputated. Dalsu guesses that the explosion must have been severe enough to cause such damage. The man clarifies that the amputation wasn't due to the explosion, and they suspect the culprits cut off his hand and took it with them. Dalsu was shocked to hear this. The scene shifts back to the fight, where the giant man stands in front of his terrified opponent. The giant man wonders aloud if he really has to fight him. It's one thing to look down at him, but pushing him to fight was crossing the line. One man comments that it seems the giant man was getting angry. Another person questions why such a scrawny guy would even be put up against him. A man asks Kim what he thinks, and Kim replies that he's seen the giant man up close. He notes that the opponent was so small, but he's certain the giant man will prove himself in this match. The referee steps in and says it seems there's been a misunderstanding. The giant man removes the opponent's hat, demanding to see his face. He flinches when he finally sees the man's face, feeling a chill run down his spine. One man comments that the face was fierce as hell, while another laughs, saying that it even scared the giant guy. In a fit of anger, the giant man punches his opponent, sending him crashing into the ground. He warns him not to make him scared. As the floor cracks under the impact, Sawol's sister and the boy with her watch in shock. She comments that the floor has broken and wonders if they really have to fight against people like that. The boy responds that they will have to train like hell from that day forward. She then wonders if the giant man's opponent has passed out, as he wasn't moving. The giant man muttered that he let his rage get the best of him. The referee shouted at him, reprimanding him for knocking out his opponent before the match even started. The giant man apologized, but explained that his opponent's face was just begging for it. The crowd wondered if the opponent was already out, and if the match was over. Kim told a man beside him that the giant was losing his touch and wasn't the right candidate. The man urged Kim to wait and watch. To everyone's surprise, the giant man's opponent got up, leaving the girl in shock. Blood poured from the man's head as he apologized to the giant, explaining that his face had been offensive. The giant man flinched and yelled at the referee to blow the whistle and officially start the match. As soon as the match began, the giant man charged, vowing to pop his opponent's eyeballs out of his skull. But the smaller man dodged the attack, infuriating the giant. In a fit of rage, the giant grabbed his opponent by the collar and slammed him to the ground again, causing the man to cough up blood. Without hesitation, the giant man punched him. The scene shifts to Sawol, who was working when she heard the doorbell. She wondered if it was a package. She then logged out of her VR headset and appeared in her room. Approaching the door, she asked who was there. The person on the other side replied that it was a delivery. The scanner requested the resident confirmation protocol, and as the man showed his scanner, it was scanned, causing the door to open. Sawol was shocked to see 3 men standing there, one of whom was holding a severed hand and telling Sawol that she had a package. The scene then shifts back to the fight, where the giant man continued to beat his opponent mercilessly. As the 2 kids closed their eyes, the girl remarked that it was so cruel, and the boy replied that it was all over. A man approached from behind, lifting them up, and asked how they had gotten there, saying there was no place for children like them. He was taking both of them out of the area. The giant man struck his opponent, sending him crashing into the wall, and remarked that it felt so good. Kim told the man next to him that he wasn't sure what the man was trying to show, but it seemed like it was over now. The opponent was so strong, and it looked like they had found themselves a decent man. The man replied that he had given that man a nickname. It must have been a couple of weeks ago when they first met. He had gone to collect from someone who was overdue for payment for ages, and if she didn't pay, he was ready to take her corpse instead. That's when the other person stepped in. At first, they were a bit intimidated by his mean face, but after a few punches, they realized he was a nobody, so they started to go after him, just enough to keep him alive. They let his fierce face get the better of them, and they beat him out of embarrassment. But then the giant man kept getting back up, no matter how much they beat him. As the people continued to talk, the small girl and boy wondered what was going on. The man continued, saying that his boys had laughed at the person, but after a while, their faces turned pale. As he stood there watching the battered man, he could only think of one thing: it's the freaking zombie. The giant man wondered how the person was still alive, after he had pummeled him so mercilessly. The audience was growing excited, commenting that the man could seriously take a punch. It was such a dramatic scene that they urged him to show what he had left. The man beside Kim continued, saying that even though the giant man seemed like a zombie, he was too nice and too much of a coward to bite anyone, even after being beaten to a pulp like that. Kim needed to stimulate his senses a little more. The man then called out to the zombie by asking how much longer he was going to be knocked around. He said the zombie needed to pay for his death, get rich, and take care of his mother. The zombie apologized in advance, saying that he thought he was going to hurt the giant man, and he felt sorry for it. The man grew angry and prepared to attack him. Meanwhile, the two kids were thrown out of the scene. The boy remarked that there was no need for them to be tossed aside like that. The girl, brushing off her clothes, stood up and told the boy they should leave. Her sister might notice she was missing. Just then, she bumped into someone and stumbled backward, quickly apologizing. She was shocked to see a police officer standing in front of her. The girl recalled her first memory, the sensation of soil falling on her forehead, and the dark ceiling lit only by a small lamp. She heard the sound of air leaking, and saw her mother's sad face as she tried to feed her, even though there was barely any milk. She then remembered the first time she saw sunlight, surrounded by a chaotic scene, as her mother held her tightly and ran. That morning, sunlight leaked through the gap between her face and the respirator that was too large for her. Suddenly, she saw her mother shot by the police. The scene shifted to another place, where she was lying on the ground, staring at yet another dark ceiling, with soil falling on her forehead. She could still hear the sound of air leaking. Despite the familiarity of the sensation, she opened her eyes and realized she was in an unknown place, separated from her mother. The people around her cared for her, as though she were their own family. A boy, who had a scar on his face, treated her like a sister, and asked for her name. She told him her name was Sawol. The boy said it was a beautiful name, and asked her to think of him as a brother. From that moment on, he became her family. She believed that he was trying to fill the role of her mother, comforting her wounded heart. However, as the wounds healed and the remnants of her pain faded, the brutal nightmares of her past resurfaced, only to leave behind a deeper scar over the old one. She then remembered the time when the refugees were fleeing and the police were shooting to kill. A man, terrified, fell to the ground and asked the police why they were doing this to them and what they had done wrong. The police officer stepped closer, explaining that it was an order from above. He told the man not to resent him too much, but it was up to them. Then, he shot the refugees. The girl stopped reminiscing, thinking that she was going to die. So far, she had been lucky enough to dodge the bullets, but now she was sure she would die. The police officer drew his gun, aiming it at the people nearby and telling them to separate. They became frightened and scattered, pleading not to be shot. As Sawol opened her eyes, she saw that the police officer was stepping away, leaving the area. She was confused and wondered why they hadn't shot them both. The boy grabbed her hand and explained that during the contests at the fight club, the refugees were temporarily allowed to move within a designated boundary. He asked how anyone would come to the fight club if they didn't put their lives on the line. She replied that he should have told her that earlier. Just then, a policeman stopped by, calling out to them. He remarked that, as refugees, their clothes were surprisingly nice. He mentioned that there were rumors about the residents secretly helping the refugees. Sawol remembered Sol's words. The policeman continued, saying that if it was discovered, both the refugee and the resident who provided aid would be shot on sight. As they moved forward, Sawol suddenly threw a stone, hitting him, and angrily demanded to know what was wrong and why they were threatening to kill them over something like that. The boy asked what she was doing. The policeman, pointing his gun at her, coldly remarked that it was a nasty way to express a death wish. The scene shifted to Sol's house, where she was tied to a chair, thinking that Sawol had snuck out again. A man pointed a katana at her neck and asked what she was looking at. He reminded her that when the delivery agents arrived, all she had to do was hand over the box that was placed there. He instructed her to act natural and give it to him as if it were an ordinary package. She thought it would be better this way, but she clenched her hands, wondering if she could make a run for it when the delivery agent came in. She would run like hell. The scene shifted back to Sawol, where a bullet struck the ground beneath her, and a man stepped forward, knocking the policeman's hand down. The policeman asked who he was. The man responded that refugees were allowed to pass through the street that day, so the police had no reason to kill them without cause. He added that he didn't think a kid throwing a rock at the back of their head would qualify as a just cause. The policeman pulled his hand back, and the man urged him to have some patience, pointing out that there was a contest going on. They needed to make the refugees believe that it was safe for them to come. He turned to the kids and asked if they understood. The kids had already escaped to a street, and they were relaxing after running so fast. The boy asked Sawol what she was thinking. He admitted that he thought they were really going to die. He knew she was angry, but it was all so reckless. She replied that, in fact, she was more frightened than angry at the situation, and that fear had pissed her off. The scene shifted to Sol's house, where a man had fallen asleep while sitting. His leader smacked him on the head, asking how he could doze off. The second man mumbled that it was so boring and wondered when the delivery agent would arrive. The first man replied that they wouldn't still be sitting there if they knew. Just then, someone knocked on the door. When Sawol entered, Sol was shocked to see her. The first man commented that it was excellent, though he was disappointed about not having a hostage. Sol urgently told Sawol to run away from there. A delivery boy dropped off a box at a house and then left with his truck. Shortly afterward, someone contacted him, informing him that due to a terrorist attack in districts 5 through 7, the agent responsible had been taken out of commission. Until a new agent was recruited, he would need to cover that area as well. The delivery agent refused, stating that he was already overwhelmed with his own district. The person on the other end asked him to do overtime and mentioned that the agent from districts 5 through 6 would also be covering the area. If necessary, the supervisor wanted him to work overnight. The delivery agent questioned if the man was really suggesting that they wake their clients in the middle of the night, which seemed ridiculous. The person told him to quit complaining. He would be doing overtime, and if the agent had any issues, he should address the supervisor. The suspect was still at large, so he was warned to be careful. Back at Sewell's house, the men rushed to capture Sawol, and Sewell desperately urged Sawol to escape. Sawol wondered who these people were. The first man attempted to capture Sawol, but she dodged him. As Sewell tried to help, the second man stopped her, and the third man moved in to grab Sawol. Sawol noticed one of them had grabbed Sewell's hair, so she rushed forward to kick him, shouting at him for daring to lay a hand on her sister. She landed a blow, but the third man pulled her back and threw her against the wall, sneering at her boldness. Sewell asked what they were planning to do with the child. The boy who had been kicked by Sawol responded, saying she wasn't like a typical kid. Sewell told them that they would pay for this. The first man told the second man that he couldn't believe he let a kid beat him. The second man defended himself, saying he was just caught off guard. Suddenly, they heard the doorbell ring, and the men smiled, relieved that the delivery agent had finally arrived. Sawol pleaded to be let go, but the man holding her tightened his grip, telling her to be quiet. He was being polite now, but warned her not to try anything funny. The delivery agent's identity was confirmed, and when the door opened, the agent first addressed Sawol, who was standing alone. The other men quickly hid out of sight. The delivery agent checked Sawol's identity with his machine and then handed her the parcel. She thanked him, adding that she had another package to deliver. As she grabbed the box, her gaze briefly flicked to the others hiding around her. She lifted another parcel and wondered what was inside and why it needed to be handed off to the delivery agent. As Sewell handed the box to the agent, he asked if she had written down the name and address. She agreed. Sawol, still unsure of what was in the box, thought she needed to stop Sewell. Even though she didn't know the contents, she was certain those men were bad news. In a flash of desperation, Sawol bit the man's hand. It made a soft sound, but she hoped it would be enough to make him loosen his grip. The delivery agent, having noticed Sawol's bite, chose to ignore it and left, thinking perhaps it was her first time sending a package. Inside the house, the man threw Sawol against the wall, calling her an annoying brat. Sewell quickly rushed over to her, asking what those men were doing. She had done what they had asked after all. The man showed his hand, where Sawol had bitten him, and angrily asked if she thought of him as nothing more than a lump of meat. The second man looked at the first one, questioning if he didn't feel any shame for being bitten by a girl. The first man seethed with anger. The third man, sensing the tension escalating, intervened, saying it was enough and suggesting they leave the house. Sawol, still defiant, asked them what they had given the delivery agent and what was in the box. The third man approached her, speaking calmly. He explained that they might have been a little rough, but she had gotten the wrong impression of them. He then showed her his hand, revealing that they were refugees. He told her they couldn't send the package themselves. There was something they needed to send to a distant location, but the police kept a very close watch on them, which left them with no other option but to use the delivery agent. Just then, they heard an explosion in the distance. Sawol turned toward the men, who were now grinning. The third man chuckled, revealing with a smirk that he had been kidding. It wasn't just a package. It was a bomb. He then asked the two of them to join him, as it was time to pick up their delivery vehicle. The scene shifts outside the fighting area, where a boy meets a man and apologizes for being late. The man remarks that he had been slacking off as usual and had to handle the event on his own because of the boy's delay. The boy apologizes again, explaining that he had urgent business to attend to, and then inquires about the contest. The man replies that it's already over. The boy was surprised and points out that he wasn't that late. The man responds that under normal circumstances, it should still be ongoing. However, after watching the victors fight, all the other contestants gave up. The boy was astonished to hear that everyone gave up. The man explains that one contestant mustered the courage to challenge the victor, but was knocked out with a single punch. The boy marvels at this, and says it sounds incredible. The man, uncertain, replies that he isn't sure about it. He then asks the boy to come inside. They enter and see the zombie contestant sitting with injuries on his face, surrounded by others. The man comments that it seems someone beat them to him. The boy, surprised to see the winner, notices the injuries on his face and wonders why. If he knocked out the other contestant with one punch, his own face was so battered as though he had fought fiercely. The man mentioned that he was curious about something. He then called out to Hong, asking if he was there to recruit for his little club. Hong replied that it was none of his business and suggested they each focus on what they were there to do. The man asked what that was, remarking that Hong had no manners and had come a long way. Hong wondered if he hadn't told the man not to call him by his name. The man retorted, asking what Hong was going to do about it. A man in a red coat intervened, telling them both there was no need to make things awkward and urging them to relax. Hong, preparing to leave, asked if he wasn't to his liking, adding that he wasn't mean enough and that they didn't need good guys in his organization. The man in the red coat remarked on the zombie contestant's face. The boy then shook hands with the zombie contestant, introducing himself as Yu Jae-eun, the casting director from Daehan Delivery Services. He congratulated the contestant on his victory, mentioning he had heard how amazing he was. The zombie contestant glared at him and asked what he could do for him. Yu Jae, feeling a chill, replied that it was a proposal they made to all contest winners, and asked if he was interested in applying for the delivery agent assessment. The scene shifts to Sawol's house, where the bomb was planted outside. The three criminals rush out, mentioning that the bomb had gone off and the police would be there any minute, urging each other to hurry. However, they are shocked when the delivery truck explodes, and the agent was seen standing there. This unexpected turn leaves them stunned, wondering how it happened. One of them asks what they should do now, while the second suggests splitting up. The delivery agent, turning around, guesses that their overtime pay was coming out of their pockets. Inside the house, Sawol asked Sul if she knew there was a bomb in the box. Sul replied that she hadn't known for sure, but she had a vague idea of what might be inside. Sawol was shocked and asked how Sul could give something like that to a delivery agent. Sul responded, asking what other choice she had. If she hadn't done what the criminals told her, Sawol might have been hurt. Tearfully, Sawol left, telling Sul that she hated her. She knew the delivery agent was going to die, and Sul could have thought of another way out. Sul asked where Sawol was going. Outside their house, the delivery agent had already defeated the three criminals. When Sawol stepped outside, Shiva was surprised to see her and remarked that she was glad the delivery agent was fine. The delivery agent, having been kind to her since their last meeting, asked why she was coming out. As he was about to guess, one of the bad guys got up and tried to capture the girl, telling the delivery agent that he had scared them all and that it was rude to start throwing punches like that. They only wanted the delivery vehicle, and unless the agent wanted the girl to die, he should step aside. Sawol struggled to free herself. The delivery agent, puzzled, wondered if he was tripping, as he could have sworn this had happened the last time they met. He then mentioned that Sawol wasn't cut out to be a delivery agent, and that she didn't need to be around someone who would only weigh them down. Sawol replied that she wasn't going to be a burden, then kicked the man in the leg, causing him pain. The man, enraged, aimed to attack her with his katana, threatening to kill her. But Sawol stopped him by kicking him in the head, causing his mask to break and forcing him to stumble backward. The delivery agent, impressed, thought she was quite skilled. The man rolled in pain, clutching his eyes, and vowed to kill her. He then got up and lunged at her with the katana. Sawol, however, punched him in the belly. Despite the pain, he threw Sawol against the wall. He turned to attack her again, telling her that he had disliked her from the moment he first laid eyes on her, and should have killed her then. Now, he would finish the job. As the man tried to strike Sawol, the delivery agent intervened, knocking the man down. He turned to Sawol and said that her kick was better than her punch, then warned her not to close her eyes, or she might die. He asked if she lived there. Sawol hesitated, initially agreeing, but then quickly disagreed. He asked if Sul was her sister. Sawol clarified that she didn't live there. The delivery agent remarked that living with a refugee was a brave choice. Sawol reiterated that she didn't live there. The delivery agent asked Sawol to tell Sul that she had saved him. Sawol was confused by this request. As he opened the truck door to enter, Sawol asked what he meant. She reminded him that he had almost died because Sul had handed him a bomb. So shouldn't he blame Sul? How could he say she saved him? He agreed with her and explained that he was used to such situations. He then contacted his control room, informing them that he had apprehended the thieves of the service vehicle. It seemed like they were the same guys from the previous day, but he was fine. He told Sawol that her sister's poor acting wasn't entirely unrelated to this, although, in large part, it was thanks to his incredible animal instincts. The control room operator asked if the agent was injured. The delivery agent replied that his lifespan had likely shortened a bit more from the loud explosion. The operator congratulated him. Just then, the delivery agent noticed a man about to attack Sawol and cursed his late arrival. The scene shifts to the zombie contestant, who was staring at Yujay's business card, recalling that Yujay had asked if he was interested in applying for the delivery agent assessment. As luck would have it, there wasn't an assessment the next day, but if the contestant was interested, he should apply next time. The contestant reflected on the injuries to his face and was reminded to come back and apply when the assessment opened again. The man in the red coat, sitting nearby, asked what the zombie contestant was staring at, and if he was thinking of applying to be a delivery agent. He then told him to forget about it, as he couldn't possibly become a delivery agent with such a mean face. The clients would have heart attacks just from glimpsing his face when they received their packages. The zombie contestant replied that he would be wearing the respiratory mask, so that should be fine. The man remarked that it sounded like a joke, noting that 90% of the menacing look came from the zombie contestant's eyes. He added that even if the contestant wore the mask, they still wouldn't pick him after the interviews. He then asked if the zombie contestant wanted to bet on it. The man stood up and asked if the contestant would get tanned with a face like that. He was clearly born to be a monster. He mentioned that he would put in a good word for him with Hong, so the zombie contestant could work for him, make a living, and pay off his debt. The zombie contestant replied that he had already said he didn't want to be a criminal, but he entered the contest because, as the man mentioned, he had no other choice. He paused, adding that if the man leaned closer and asked what would happen if he kept pushing forward, despite drowning in debt. How could the zombie contestant afford to be picky with a job? The zombie contestant then suggested that the man take his winnings from the contest, and, once he became a delivery agent, he would pay off the rest. The man replied that they weren't going to hire him, and asked if the contestant thought he was lying. He paused, thought for a moment, and then said that it would be fine. He would give him a chance, knowing that delivery agents made a pretty penny. However, he added, the interest rate would double while the zombie contestant waited to become an agent. The zombie contestant became enraged, wondering what kind of nonsense that was, and he found the interest rate outrageous, even as it stood. The man then suggested he could go become a mobster, but he should understand that delivery agents were far more violent and dangerous than mere thugs. He added that he only hoped the zombie contestant wouldn't quit halfway. If he did, he would have no choice but to work for Hong. As the man left, he continued, saying that when that day came, the zombie contestant better not keep up with the foolish act. He might not be able to hurt him, but he reminded him that his mother was very much accessible to him. Sawol began narrating her story, reflecting on her life after being abandoned. She explained that after being left alone, she wandered aimlessly, not knowing why she kept moving forward. Perhaps it was her survival instinct that pushed her to keep going. In the present, Sawol lay unconscious in a hospital bed, while Sawol sat quietly in the corner of the dimly lit room. Sitting there, she recalled the moment she woke up after losing her new family. When Sawol first regained consciousness, she was shocked to find Sawol by her side. Sawol had gently asked if she was okay, but Sawol reacted defensively. She jerked away, demanding to know who Sawol was and why she was there. Her shouting only worsened her injuries, prompting Sawol to rush to her side. Sawol urged her to stay still and be careful, reminding her that she wasn't in any condition to move. Sawol remembered fragments of her early days with Sawol. She had been given new clothes, and saw a table full of food for the first time in her life. She ate so much that it felt like her stomach might burst. For the first time, she slept in a clean, warm bed, in a room where no dirt fell on her face as she rested. She never asked Sawol why she had saved her, or why she cared for her. Deep down, Sawol was afraid. She worried that if she asked too many questions, she might one day be sent away. One day, Sawol noticed a photograph on a table, and was surprised to see a boy in the picture who had mismatched eyes just like hers. When Sawol saw her staring at the photo, she explained that it was a picture of her parents and her brother, who also had the same eyes as Sawol. Out of curiosity, Sawol asked where Sawol's family was now. Sawol simply replied that they were no longer with her. Sawol didn't ask further, realizing that those memories were likely painful for Sawol. Sometimes, Sawol accidentally called Sawol by her brother's name. However, Sawol didn't mind. In fact, she felt happy to be a substitute for Sawol's lost brother, because it meant she could stay by Sawol's side. 2 years had passed since Sawol started living with Sawol. But now, with Sawol in the hospital, Sawol began to question her own feelings. She wondered whether she stayed with Sawol because she truly cared for her, or because she feared losing the comfort and security that Sawol provided. At the same time, in a delivery company office, a delivery knight sat with the manager. The manager brought him a soda and praised him for his hard work. However, the knight wasn't pleased. He complained that knights were constantly being injured, crippled, or killed. He said they desperately needed backup workers on standby. The manager agreed and mentioned that he had sent a proposal to the board for approval. However, the board was reluctant to spend money on hiring standby workers who would need to be paid a minimum wage. Frustrated, the knight stood up to leave, remarking that the lack of backup workers was making their jobs impossible. The manager reminded him about the upcoming recruit test, hoping they'd find someone new. The knight suddenly remembered the stolen truck and asked the manager if it had been recovered yet. The manager explained that the gangsters they caught were tough. They had already tortured 2 of them to death but hadn't gotten any useful information. The third gangster remained silent, and they still had no leads on the truck's location. As the knight left the building, he thought back to an earlier encounter with a gangster. The gangster had told him that to people like the delivery knights, they must seem like villains, but in reality, society had made them this way. The knight had dismissed the comment, but the gangster continued, saying that they were treated as less than human, so they had become like beasts. Beasts hunt when they're hungry, the gangster had said. We take what we need to survive. The knight had been puzzled by the gangster's words. The man had added that his family was probably waiting for him with their necks outstretched, and he felt bad for them. Still, the gangster had remarked that at least they had managed to secure one truck. The refugee had told the knight that thanks to stealing the truck, his family wouldn't starve for a while. The knight had retorted that the injured delivery knight also had a family, and now their lives would be incredibly difficult. The refugee admitted he felt bad about it, but countered, "What are we supposed to do when we're starving to death?" At the delivery knight recruitment test, a large crowd had gathered. Among the contestants was Zombie, who nervously surveyed the others. He felt out of place, thinking everyone else looked much stronger than him. He even considered leaving. Amid the group, a resident began mocking the refugees, commenting that they smelled, and questioning why the company even allowed them to take the exam. One of the refugees, triggered by the comment, tried to punch the resident. However, the resident dodged the attack and taunted them, saying, "Fighting is all you seem to know." The resident then punched the refugee square in the face. Despite stumbling, the refugee remained standing and looked ready to retaliate. Before the fight could escalate further, a security guard struck both of them on the head. The guard scolded them, calling the testing ground a sacred place and warning them to follow the rules. He added that anyone who threatened security would be disqualified immediately. The men, still angry, threatened to fight him. The guard, unfazed, invited them to try, though he warned they'd likely leave in an ambulance. Just then, the company's manager, Bae Dalsu, stepped onto the stage. Addressing the crowd, he introduced himself as the delivery manager for District 5. Bae Dalsu wasted no time explaining the rules of the recruitment process. He announced that the strongest candidate would be chosen through a one-on-one tournament. The matches would continue until only 2 finalists remained, after which interviews would determine the ultimate winner. A schedule was displayed on a screen, showing the contestants their match numbers and opponents. Bae Dalsu wished everyone luck, especially those aiming for the honor of being the best fighter, earning a high salary, and securing residency. Zombie checked his badge and discovered he was contestant number 31, set to face contestant number 15. Hoping for a weak opponent, Zombie scanned the room. To his horror, contestant number 15 was a giant of a man. Zombie silently regretted not leaving earlier. Sawol woke up in her hospital bed to the sound of her phone ringing. She answered it and was surprised by the news on the other end. She promised to pick up what she had been waiting for the next day before ending the call. As she put the phone down, a nurse entered the room and scolded her for moving. The nurse noticed blood on the bed and realized Sawol had pulled out her stitches. Panicking, the nurse rushed to get a doctor, but Sawol ignored her, clutching her phone tightly. Tears ran down her face as she thought about how Sawol wouldn't have to live in hiding anymore. At the recruitment center, 28 of the 32 candidates had already been eliminated. Only 4 contestants remained, including Zombie. Manager Bae Dalsu watched the matches closely and pointed out one contestant to his secretary. The secretary commented on how scary the man looked, but Bae clarified that it wasn't his face he found impressive. It was the sheer power behind his punches. However, Bae couldn't understand why the man let others hit him so much. The manager announced the final match, where the last 2 finalists would be chosen. Zombie, bloodied and tired, faced contestant number 17. His opponent mocked him, pointing out how awful he looked. Number 17 laughed, saying it was his 3rd time trying to become a delivery knight. He claimed he had been unlucky before, but believed his luck had changed. Confidently, he warned Zombie that his scary eyes only worked on amateurs and that he'd knock him out with 1 punch. Suddenly, number 17 lunged forward and delivered a strong punch, sending Zombie flying backward. He followed up with a series of punches, knocking Zombie to the ground. Certain he had won, number 17 turned to the security guard and declared the match over. He asked about the next test he needed to take. As he began stepping off the platform, the guard stopped him and warned that leaving before the match officially ended would result in disqualification. Annoyed, number 17 shouted that disqualification wasn't needed because he had clearly won. The guard explained that a victory required the opponent to be knocked out. Confused, number 17 looked back at Zombie and froze in shock. Zombie was slowly getting up, his body covered in blood and bruises. Zombie stood, battered but determined, refusing to give up. Horrified, number 17 muttered to himself, realizing that zombie looked like a man who was ready to die. The zombie guy started walking towards player 17, apologizing because he believed he was about to hurt him. Player 17 became furious and tried to punch the zombie guy, but the zombie guy dodged the attack with ease. Then, he moved quickly and landed a strong punch on player 17's chin, knocking him out cold. Del-Su, watching from the sidelines, was shocked. He stared at player 17 lying injured on the ground and found the zombie guy very interesting. Later, in the interview room, the panel sat in front of the two finalists. One was a refugee, and the other, the zombie guy, was a resident from District 4-10. One of the interviewers congratulated them for winning against so many strong applicants. Then he turned to the zombie guy and asked him to take off his hat. When the zombie guy, whose name was Go Taiwoon, removed his hat, the interviewers were startled by his face. One of them then brought up Taiwoon's criminal record, revealing that he had been convicted of murder. Taiwoon started trembling as the panel discussed his past. Another interviewer asked Del-Su for his opinion. Del-Su stated that applicants with such criminal records should have been disqualified from the beginning. The entire panel seemed to agree and was ready to eliminate Taiwoon. Feeling hopeless, Taiwoon lowered his head. But then, Del-Su came up with a suggestion. He proposed installing a miniature bomb in Taiwoon's neck as a safety device. Del-Su explained that the purpose of the bomb was originally to deal with refugees who tried to become delivery knights with bad intentions. However, in this case, they could use it as a precaution against Taiwoon's criminal history. Del-Su warned Taiwoon that the bomb would detonate if he ever harmed a customer. Despite the harsh condition, Taiwoon agreed. He was willing to do anything to get the job. The scene shifted to the final test ground. Del-Su stood before Taiwoon and the other finalist. He explained that the winner of this test would be selected as the final applicant. The goal of the test was to prove their fighting abilities against multiple opponents. Each player would enter a separate door, fight the enemies inside, and try to exit through the door on the other side. The first person to finish would win. Del-Su emphasized that a delivery knight's priority was to complete deliveries quickly, and they had to defeat any obstacles in their way. Both contestants looked nervous as they stood in front of their respective gates. Taiwoon, however, was determined to win. He needed to pass this test to become a delivery knight so he could pay off his debt, earn money, and live a happy life with his mother. Finally, the test began. As Taiwoon stepped through his gate, he was shocked by the sight of the enemy standing in front of him. Taiwoon felt scared as he entered the test room and saw a large group of people standing in front of him. To his shock, there were children among them, and they were all refugees. Feeling uneasy, he turned to the panel and asked why his opponents were refugees. Del-Su dismissed his concern and told him to focus on the task. But Taiwoon resisted, saying he couldn't bring himself to fight innocent people who weren't criminals. The sight of the trembling refugees deeply disturbed him. Taiwoon told Del-Su that he couldn't fight them, but Del-Su explained that most attacks on delivery trucks were carried out by refugees. This test, he said, was a simulation to prepare for real-life situations. He further added that while not all refugees were criminals, many ended up committing crimes because of their circumstances. Del-Su insisted that age and gender didn't matter when it came to crime. He urged Taiwoon to act quickly, warning him that if he failed, he would have no choice but to work under Mr. Hong. Looking at the refugees, Taiwoon felt tears well up in his eyes. He couldn't bring himself to harm them. Del-Su couldn't tell if Taiwoon was giving up or not. Meanwhile, contestant number 13 emerged from his test room, announcing his victory. Del-Su noticed blood on his hands and realized he had killed all the refugees in his test. The contestant seemed unbothered, proudly stating that he had done what was necessary to win. Del-Su commented that refugees often faced situations where they had to fight their own kind to survive. Contestant 13 had likely prepared himself for this moment many times before. Taiwoon, now walking through a hallway, wondered if he should just run away. He questioned what he would do next. Was he going to end up working as a thug under Mr. Hong? Despite his doubts, he believed he had made the right decision by refusing to fight the refugees. That night, Taiwoon returned to his gang. They mocked him, saying he would never become a delivery knight. One of them handed him a card and ordered him to go to the address listed on it to meet Mr. Hong. Taiwoon tore up the card and refused. Elsewhere, Sawol sat alone in her room, looking sad. She heard a noise and became alert, wondering who it could be since Sul was still in the hospital. As footsteps approached, she grew scared. When the person finally appeared, Sawol was shocked to see Sul standing in front of her. Overcome with emotion, she hugged Sul tightly and began crying, apologizing and blaming herself for everything. Sul comforted her, reassuring her that she was fine. Then, Sul shared some good news. Sawol was finally going to get her residency permit. Forgetting about her injuries in the excitement, Sul hurt herself while celebrating. Sawol grew worried, but Sul assured her she was fine. She told Sawol they needed to leave soon to register her as a resident. Sawol cried tears of joy, realizing she could finally live openly with Sawol without worrying about what others thought. They hugged, celebrating the big day. Later, they planned to have a small party. At the registration center, a man informed them they were incredibly lucky to have found a donor matching the age and gender Sawol had specified. He introduced himself as Hong and explained that the process required some special steps. A doctor entered and began explaining the procedure. They would transplant the residency barcode from the donor's hand to the recipient's hand. The doctor emphasized that the ink used in these barcodes was unique and impossible to replicate, making illegal acquisition very difficult. Once the surgery was complete, they would need to hack into the government's central computer system to switch the donor's information with the recipient's. Hong reassured them that the doctor handling the process was the best in the country. Sawol, feeling grateful, asked if she could meet and thank the donor. The doctor laughed and called her cute, but explained that the donor's identity was a secret. Hong ordered the doctor to take Sawol to the operating room, while he and Sul stayed back to talk. In the operating room, the doctor instructed Sawol to lie on the bed and wait. She complied, feeling nervous. Meanwhile, Hong revealed to Sewell that the donor was a 15-year-old girl named Park Min-jung. She had gone missing 5 months ago and was recently brought to the hospital with severe injuries. Her parents had died in an accident, leaving her without a guardian. Hong explained that Min-jung was the perfect donor due to her age, gender, and background. They had connections at the hospital, allowing them to take her without raising suspicion. He added that once a person was declared dead, they could hack into the government system and complete the process. Hong told Sewell to transfer the payment so the surgery could proceed. Sewell, worried, hesitated. She asked what would happen to the donor after the surgery. Hong brushed off her concern, stating that the girl would likely die soon anyway. He assured Sewell that Min-jung was doing something good before her death, and called it a win-win situation. Sewell tried to convince herself not to hesitate any longer. Hours passed, and Sawol remained on the bed, waiting. She began feeling uneasy, and got up when she heard strange noises from behind a curtain. Sliding it aside, she saw another girl lying on a bed. Sawol wondered if this was the donor. The room was dark, but she noticed the girl trembling and making noises. Suddenly the girl's hand swelled, shocking Sawol. She stepped back in fear and bumped into a man. Before she could react, she noticed the donor girl falling to the ground. Another man entered the room, instructing the first man to take the specimen. Sawol, confused, tried to make sense of the situation. Then, she saw the first man pull out a gun and point it at her. Terrified, Sawol froze. The man shot her in the head. She fell to the ground, bleeding heavily as her world went dark.